Hello and welcome. My name is Amit Kumar. I handle operations at AltLayer, and welcome today to Re-Fundamentals. We used to call it the roll-up day, but given that everyone's talking about fundamentals, we felt it'd be good to kind of change it. So this is the return to fundamentals. But we have a great lineup of speakers, panelists, and keynotes from folks at Ethereum Foundation. From Etherealize, we have Sandeep from Polygon, and many other builders in the space that you could listen to today. So this is going to be an event that will last until 4:30 p.m. and then we'll have a drink session planned after that. So please stay with us until then. Before I start off, we would like to thank all the partners, of course us, organizing this, but also our partners, including EigenLayer, Brevis, Boundless, ETH Global, MetaMask, Automata, Phoenix, and Hack Seasons Conference for all their financial support, but also logistics that they have helped us with. So thank you very much, and hope you will enjoy the session. So to start with, let me give you a very quick background on what we do at AltLayer. So AltLayer is essentially an infrastructure service provider. We help people, including developers, deploy different components that could be beneficial for them from an infrastructure perspective. What do you mean by this? So more concretely, we have 3 lines of offerings. So the first one is for rollups. So imagine you are a builder, you're building an app, and eventually you want to have your own chain in the sense of a rollup, and you come to us and we'll help you deploy that rollup for you. So you don't have to worry about how the underlying sequencer works, how to customize different components of the rollup stack, and you'd focus on basically building your app and focusing on distribution, and we would handle all the infra components for you. So that's basically what rollups pipeline or rollups product do for us. The second one is AVS and BVS, so actively or autonomous validated services and Bitcoin validated services. And at a high level, what these do is basically, if you are building a rollup, there are certain components that you may need for your rollup. So for example, of course, we all know that most rollups today, they rely on a centralized sequencer, but what if you wanted to have a decentralized sequencer network that supports your rollup? And you could build that using something like an EigenLayer-based AVS, and similarly a Bitcoin validated service. So that network of operators will then become a decentralized sequencer network for your rollup. So we help deploy these rollups and these AVSs for you as well as a part of the second offering. The third one is, of course, on the agent side. So we also help people deploy agents. So imagine you're building an agent today. So let's say consider AIXBT. How do you know that when you're interacting with an agent like AIXBT, how do you know that this is actually an agent and not necessarily human typing a response behind your comment? So the way we do this is by running your agent in trusted hardware. So for example, Intel SGX, and the trusted hardware basically gives you hardware proof that you could verify either. So this proof could go to a user, and the user could verify it locally and says, look, I know that this output or this inference came indeed from an agent that is run unmodified and unaltered. Or you could send that to Ethereum, and then it could be used by other apps on the Ethereum chain or other rollups, and then you could build composable applications or composable agents by relying on the proof that this hardware gives you. So yeah, basically there are 3 different product offerings: so RAS, AVS, actively and automated validated services, and then agents. Oops, sorry. On the RAS side, we of course work with almost every major stack provider out there. So OP Stack, Arbitrum Orbit. This is not an extensive list, but we work with OP Stack, Arbitrum Orbit, Starkware Stack as well, and and so on and so forth. So if you decide to pick any stack, and if you even like to have some customization done to that stack. So for example, let's say if you want to have a custom gas token because you believe that you want to use your token as the gas token for that rollup, we help you customize some of those bits as well. Of course, you can pick and choose different components or different offerings at different layers. So on the stack level, so at the execution level, you could pick your DA layer, so the likes of Celestia, Eigen, DA, Whale, and so on. And then, of course, you could also pick your sequencing configuration. So nowadays you have things like Espresso that allows you for shared sequencing. You could use some of those services as well. And of course, for interoperability, of course, when you're building a rollup, you actually have a base canonical bridge that comes from your rollup contracts on Ethereum. But if you decide to use external bridges as well, you also have integration with third-party services. For example, bridging, for example, account abstraction services that you could use as well. And by the way, all of this is abstracted away from you. So as a client, you come to us and you say, hey, here's what we want from our chain, and here are the requirements. And then we take those requirements and translate that into a real offering where you do not have to worry about, okay, who do I have to talk to, which BD person do I have to talk to get, let's say, hyperlane integrated for my rollup. All of that gets taken care of by us, and you basically go and focus on building your application and building a distribution for that application. So more concretely, so of course, when you come to us, you don't have to have a technical expertise, even if you're just a pure BD team or product person. You just come to us and you have to just specify your requirements, and they will handle that. So there's no tech, a requirement from your technical expertise requirement from your side. Of course, if you expect that your chain will require some sort of SLA, we of course help you with that as well, with certain caveats. But we also help you with, so imagine we have seen this scenario many times where chains launch, and then a chain gets launched, and then there's some sort of an event or marketing event happening on chain. So for example, let's say you're trying to attract the initial set of users for your testnet, so you deploy some sort of marketing campaign on chain, and then your RPC basically goes down. So we actually handle some of those requirements, of course, scaling your RPC, anything that goes beyond that, but also, for example, limiting. For example, you feel like, okay, this specific, let's say, airdrop hunter is basically trying to spam your chain so that it basically inflates your transaction volume, and you don't want that. So we also have these services where we could configure some of these put some rate limiting configurations so that those things can be limited, so you don't have DOS attacks happening on your RPC or other services. We also have, of course, as I said earlier, many of these rollups actually still run with a centralized sequencer, but that still needs that, you still have to consider the scenario that sequencer may go down for all sorts of reasons. So what sort of backups you have. So we also have those backups that gives you those robustness guarantees that you get even when you have a centralized sequencer. Now, there's some of the clients that we have recently announced, and some of them have not been announced yet. So I'm going to, for the next few minutes, I'll give you some examples of some projects that we work with. So one of them, the recent announcement was made on T-Rex. It's a chain being built by a company called EVG in Hong Kong. And they're basically building a chain which is an Arbitrum Orbit chain. And that allows people to basically, you would then interact with external platforms like YouTube, Twitter, and so on. And then you'll be able to earn social engagement points on this chain. So anyway, so it's basically a social engagement marketing platform for social media platforms. The second one that we're working very closely with is called Gattaca. It's a based rollup stack that we recently announced. So the Gattaca is a product of Titan. So I'm not sure how many of you know, Titan is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, block builder in the Ethereum space. And they recently announced their own stack called Gattaca, which is basically a stack that is a based rollup stack. And what basically it means that when you are launching a rollup, you can decide to have your sequencer being run by one of the validators on the Ethereum network. There's some announcement that's going to come in the coming months, but basically we now also support this based rollup stack by Titan. And this is basically a modification of OP stack. This might be surprising, but a lot of people say that Polkadot has a lot of elements that Ethereum has built over the years, and one of them is this notion of parachain, that now you could use it as a rollup as well. So one of the main points, and by the way, we are announcing this for the first time, that we also support now Polkadot-based rollups as well. And the cool thing about Polkadot or their stack is that initially, when you are building using Polkadot or in that ecosystem, you have to go through this kind of auction mechanism that allows you to basically buy a slot for your parachain. All of that was complicated, and it's not necessary in the rollup world. So now you have a Polkadot SDK that allows you that simplifies all of that components. So you just have to go and pick which version, which configuration you want, and you don't have to go and fight for those auctions that used to exist in the classical Polkadot space. So we also now support Polkadot rollups if you're building in that space. Finally, on the AVS and BVS side, we have this framework that we call restake rollups, which is basically a framework that allows or augments your existing rollups with different features. So imagine, as I said earlier, imagine if you're running a rollup and you want to have a decentralized sequencer set. There are many ways of achieving this, and one way that we propose is to have this network of sequencer being built as an AVS. So imagine asking your operators in the AltLayer ecosystem to stake, let's say, or restake assets, and then become a participant in your sequencer network. So then they have the right to sequence your blocks. So that's one application, but basically there are three different products that we built in this AltLayer or AVS or restaking model. So the first one that I mentioned earlier, is this Squad, which is the decentralized sequencing AVS. We also have this Mark, which is a fast finality AVS. So the purpose of Mark is that imagine if you're running a rollup today, you have to wait for your transaction to be finalized on Ethereum, and that can take up to 12 to 13 minutes because Ethereum does not have a single slot finality. And so what you need is like a decentralized network that gives you this pre-confirmation that this transaction that was processed by my rollup will eventually get included and get confirmed by Ethereum validators. And so this is basically being built or has been built by us as a fast finality AVS. We also have this network called Vital, which is interesting for optimistic rollups. So the way optimistic rollups works, for those who don't know, is that you have a network of nodes that are keeping an eye on whether the rollup is operating correctly, and if something looks suspicious or wrong, these challenger nodes will then go and challenge and say, hey, this block was invalid, and therefore you have going this whole challenge game, and that's why you have the 7-day or 14 days withdrawal period. So the question is, who are these watchers? Who is going to watch my network for this malicious behavior? And this is basically what the purpose of Vital is. So Vital is a network of nodes that keeps a track of all the blocks being produced by the rollup, and basically raises alarm and alerts when things don't look good, and then they basically get engaged in a game that allows them to basically roll back and revert things. So very recently we announced a partnership with Sonium, which is, as you may know, it's an OP stack based rollup built for Sony, the company, the gaming company. And so this Sony-based, so it's a fast finality layer that we launched for Sonium, and this is already live today on AltLayer mainnet. And it uses, of course, AltLayer-based ETH LSTs, but A A-star token, which is the one basically. So A-star works very closely with Sonium for the launch, and so it also supports A-star as a token, which also gives a potential advantage for people who wanted to have a rollup. So let's say imagine you have a rollup and you have a token, and you want to find a way to use this token or make use of this token in your rollup ecosystem. One way to do this is by launching one of the AVSs that can help augment the capabilities that your rollup have. And in this AVS, you can use your token as a restaking token as well. So it also brings a form of a sink for your token that could be beneficial. We also work with DIN, which is the decentralized infrastructure network built by Infura, the popular RPC provider. So DIN is actually being built as an AVS on AltLayer, and we are the infrastructure provider for that. So we actually have helped DIN build the AVS and the AVS contracts. Lastly, there's one thing that we're building recently is what's called Blitz. It's a fast finality layer similar to what I mentioned earlier with Sonium, but in the Bitcoin space. So imagine being able to use Bitcoin as your asset to secure a fast finality layer for your rollup. And that's basically what Blitz does. So at a high level, the way system works is like, imagine you have a sequencer. The sequencer takes transactions. Normally, transactions go to Ethereum. But in this case, the sequencer will also send transactions to this finality provider, which is basically a bunch of nodes. And these finality providers basically check whether the rollup block looks good to them. And if they have, then they basically sign transactions, sign basically certificates or put a signature on that to say that this block indeed looks good to us. And then that can be used as a pre-confirmation for your rollup. And these nodes, these fast finality providers are the ones staking Bitcoin. And so if they misbehave, if they lie, then their stake will get slashed. And a very quick announcement here as well. So we are working with Plume, which is an RW chain that you may know. So we are going to launch a fast finality blitz for Plume, and Plume is an Orbit chain as well. Well, we are nearly at the end. So the last announcement before we move on is that we are working, so we are sponsoring alongside Ethereum Foundation, an Ethereum house, a hacker house in San Francisco starting from July 18th. So if you are there and if you work there, if you're building something interesting, come and be there and build something interesting and potentially get funded as well. So thank you very much for coming again. We have exciting set of speakers coming on after this, so stay tuned and enjoy. Thank you.